All right, guys, today I'm doing something a little different. So, we're going to do a steroid tier list, all right? This is all going to be based from my own personal experience, so this is only going to include what I've actually taken. So, again, speaking from personal experience. And with that also said, it'll cover from the worst to the best in that order. And it's also not medical advice. It's only for educational purposes only, and by no means am I telling you to take these things. Absolutely not. Stay away from them. Don't even consider them. Now, with all that said, let's jump into it. One thing I also like to mention is I coach for a living. I'll throw up some transformations real quick. I help people make badass transformations and do things right the first time. Okay, why? Because I started coaching back in 2019. Okay, it is now 2025. I do it full time. I'm blessed to do it full time. I absolutely love it. I've had guys on board for almost 4 years now in some cases. So a lot of you guys are like family to me. But why did I get into it? Because I'd worked with previous coaches. They really did not know as much about blood work analysis and things like that, and ended up tanking my health alongside the gains that they were helping me get. Now, I've also had great coaches as well, but I've definitely had my fair share of bad coaches, people that are just in it for the transformation and essentially fuck up and wreck your health. So I decided someone needs to get in the game and do things differently and actually help people do it the right way, because people want to do these things, but they want to have good health and longevity in mind, right? So it's about using as little as possible to get you to where you want to go. That being said, if you guys are interested in coaching, applications are in the bio. You can apply there. And let's get into the video. So again, I'm only going to be covering the things that I've actually used, because I could make a bigger tier list, and maybe I will, but it's more fun to talk about what I've actually used. So it's coming from personal experience. We're going to start with the lowest, and this is going to be considered F/D tier. Shit. The first one I'm going to talk about, and some people may not agree with me here, but Anadrol. I'm going to have to put it in the F/D tier list. I know for some of you, you may not agree. However, I will get to why my point is the way that it is. In a positive light, it is insane. It is truly insane. It is probably the craziest oral I've ever used in terms of dramatic, just you take something and you notice it's there. Holy shit, I'm strong as hell. My weight's flying up on the scale. I feel amazing, but on the inside, things are going downhill. So the reality is you do feel superhuman on this shit. You do. But for me personally, now I did, again, this was one of the first things I ever used way back, and I did get a little aggressive with it. So my blood pressure rose quickly. I remember like the water retention was insane. Not to mention all of the damage it does to, your cholesterol and other markers in and around just blood work that are really hard to control. Like Anadrol, even if you're modest with it, which at that point, if you're just trying to be modest, you should really look elsewhere, is very hard to keep things under control in and around your blood work. And that's why I don't see it as a great long-term option. But I will say it is probably the craziest oral I've ever used. But I just think that the gains that come from it are not worth the side effects, because that's largely how I'm making this list here is, are the gains going to be worth the side effects? And also, how well do you maintain your gains after coming off of it? Because if it's only temporary, how beneficial is it really? My last thing to add with this one is, for me, in and around bodybuilding, it's not worth it, okay? Where do I actually see practical use case in this? Maybe like a powerlifting meet where primarily strength is the main driver and concern. I could see it being used for a couple weeks there specifically, and I could see it notably making a positive difference. However, for me and what I'm trying to accomplish, especially in bodybuilding, not worth it. F/D tier. Now, some of you guys may be expecting this one or not, I'm not sure, but D-ball. And I honestly think this is one of the most popular ones ever. Also, shout out to freaking Ronnie Coleman, right? I mean, don't they have him at some part? He's saying like just a little bit of test Deca D-ball or some shit. We should throw that up there.
Basic. You got, your test, D-ball. It's just basic stuff.
Because I remember that, and Part of the reason I ever used D-ball is because I knew Ronnie Coleman took it, honestly. Now, again, a lot of these sloppy, and that's actually how I would describe this. It's a sloppy drug. But the reason I ever even used it was largely just because I was younger, bro. I was being stupid. This was not in the times of my coaching. Similar to Anadrol, rapid size, rapid strength. I will say I do think the strength gains on Anadrol are more noticeable for sure, but when you start taking D-ball, it's obvious. Almost immediately, quickly, honestly, especially if you're prone to side effects. This is not going to be a go-to, I would suggest, for anybody. Tons of bloat, water retention, acne. The back pumps on it are insane. If you've never, this is hard to describe if you've just never experienced it, but if you've ever experienced it, you guys know the back pumps that I'm talking about. It's very uncomfortable. Again, as fun as it is for a very small period of time, as fast as that inflated bloat and gain comes, it goes when you stop taking it. If you want to be a fake natural, which I don't recommend doing, but if you want to appear that you're natural, even though you're not, D-ball is not going to be the one, because people will notice within a week if you put on 10 or 15 pounds or something ridiculous on the scale and you look like a whale, right? The only way I could see someone justifying something like D-ball is the fact that it's cheap and it's definitely a mass builder. But again, as fast as it comes, it goes. So I don't see it having any practical use case in and around bodybuilding, really, honestly. It's fun for the pumps, but overall, I think it just belongs in a lower tier. Now, let's get into C tier territory. This is where we're getting into stuff that I actually think applies and can actually be useful, but in situational circumstances. So Deca we'll start with, and I'm going to consider the C tier. Again, this is all personal preference. You're going to get some people that might say otherwise. I have used Deca before on many occasions. I have not used it in a long while, but it is popular, and so is NPP. NPP and Deca, they're both pretty popular. I think, honestly, people would call this one the king of mass builders. On paper, it actually sounds pretty good. The joint relief, it's pretty great at packing on size. Now, I would never justify just only taking Deca because of the joint relief that it gives, but that is definitely noticeable when I have taken it. And honestly, I have a love-hate relationship with Deca. That's why it's in C tier, because I don't completely oppose it, and I actually do see it situationally making sense. Honestly, I just haven't needed to use it in quite some time, and I don't know if I'll ever really use it again. I'm really not 100% sure. Maybe, but I'll get into, towards the end of this video, what I tend to kind of just run with. A common thing that people run into with Deca is the Deca dick that people talk about. You definitely can get some water retention issues. Definitely prolactin can get out of whack on this, and especially people that aren't familiar with how, these things work. Some people might be compensating with AIs and whatnot to bring down their estrogen, when the Deca is actually making your prolactin increase, and they're not even handling the root cause of the problem, and they're just making things worse. So I think that's where a lot of people, because they just don't know what they're doing, they think, oh my gosh, I'm having estrogenic side effects, I need to take an AI, and they're taking the AI, spamming it, and now they're crashing their estrogen, and their prolactin's higher, and it's just a fucking mess. So Deca can cause a lot of issues for people. But if done right, and I've coached many people using Deca, not a problem. But it's still, again, situational. So in an off season, I can see it making sense. Again, it does support joints and things like that, so it will be a lot smoother as you're pushing weight, you're putting on size, stuff like that. But I'll be honest, it's not really in my playbook anymore. I still see this being beneficial for some people, but again, this is definitely one of those compounds I recommend not doing without a coach, because a lot of people fuck it up. The same way people fuck up using Tren and stuff. This one falls in that same kind of category, even though situationally different, used for different things. Still in C tier, but a compound I do have a sweet spot for. But again, situationally, Winstrol, better known as Winnie. This is going to be the opposite of Deca. Okay, it's going to be something that will dry you out, give you a very sharp look, something that you would use to be more so like stage ready. Okay, something I would use for a prep client. So I'll throw up a prep client, something like that. Downside of this one, again, like I said, opposite of Deca. So it's actually going to dry out the joints. A lot of times people will notice when using, and I also personally noticed when using, my joints just freaking start hurting after like 2-3 weeks in. Everything feels creaky, definitely not as good. Not to mention it being an oral, it'll definitely hammer your liver. Similar to Anadrol and D-bol, but in some cases a little bit worse. I wouldn't use any of those long term, but just something to keep in mind. So what do I think on this one after using? It's never something I would just run casually. It does too much damage. Again, like I said, me coaching for a living and helping people do what I do, the goal is to keep people as healthy as possible and use what makes sense to use. It's definitely a situational drug, and you would use it more so on a prep, maybe for 2 to 4 weeks, maybe upwards of 6, depending, to really help someone just dry out and get that look on stage that they need, right? That's it, though. Definitely not used casually and only pretty much for show-ready cases. That's almost it. That's all I would really ever use it for. Maybe if someone had to get ready for a photo shoot. I have worked with a guy that models for Adidas now, which is super cool. So, depends. Who knew people would be using drugs for modeling? Hey, I did. Well, I know now. So now we're going to get into B tier, and we'll start with Proviron. Okay, we'll start with Proviron. So as much as I am putting this one higher on the list, it's more of a polished drug. It is something that I would use for pretty much prep clients normally only. It can help free up more testosterone by lowering SHBG, and it can help kind of with mood and libido and stuff like that, especially with guys on prep. Like I said, it's more of a polished drug. It's more of one of those things you use when someone's already lean and looks pretty good, not something to get you lean. But I do like it, but it's honestly, if we're talking about like what's going to make the biggest difference, I would actually put it very low on the totem pole, like D tier, F tier. It has its practical use case for me and from a coaching standpoint, because I know where to put it. But the thing is, it's like I would never just on this tier list. It really only makes sense because this is from personal use, right? And I'm speaking from personal experience. In almost all cases, I would never suggest, hey, should I use Anavar or use Proviron? Oh, Proviron. No, I would always say Anavar. You know what I mean? So I'll leave that there because it is something I've used, and so it's got to be something I put on the tier list. And it does have a good practical use case, but it's not something that most people are going to use. Now, Anavar, I'm putting this in B tier, and man, I really wanted to put this one in A tier, but I didn't. And there's a reason why, which I'll get to, but it's up there because I really like Anavar. It's mild, it's relatively safer to use, especially in comparison to some of the other orals we just talked about. Great at preserving muscle in a cutting phase. I've used it in many prep clients. I've used it myself, obviously. And great at, like I said, preserving muscle, putting on strength, lean gains. It's good across the board, man. I think that's why it's so high on this list. Like, it's good across the board. I think the biggest downside with Anavar is it's more expensive than these other compounds, and it's more mild than these other compounds. Like, as far as the noticeable differences. Like, if you're someone who's just fat, now I wouldn't even recommend you just take any gear if you're fat. You're not even, like, you might notice more of a pump in the gym, and that's about it, to be honest with you. Like, you're not just going to all of a sudden get lean as shit taking it and whatnot. Like, the people that really notice the gear, especially something like Anavar, they're already relatively lean. They look pretty good. Then when you throw in Anavar, you'll notice you do look a little bit drier. You look a little bit fuller. And the pumps do go crazy. But again, I would never use this for people that are just trying to achieve fat loss or something like that. That gets confused all the time for so many people. Like, use retatrutide, bro. Don't use Anavar. As much as I am a fan of Anavar, not for people that are just weight. And I've helped weight loss clients, dude. I've helped people lose over 100 pounds, like naturally as well. But I love Anavar though. But you guys stay away from it. Like I said, it's upper mid tier, almost up there for me. But again, I mean, it's good because like this can be used across men and women across the board too. Like a lot of women will use it as well, like maybe 5-10 milligrams, sometimes more if they're getting kind of crazy with it, right? But it's definitely up there, dude. I almost wanted to put it in A tier. It's a favorite of mine. But to be honest with you, I think it could get skewed easily. Like if you're someone who just, like I said, if you have a lot of body fat, you're not really in shape, and you take something like Anavar, it's going to be underwhelming. You would definitely be someone who would take D-ball and Anadrol and be way more impressed. Because I guess not to be a dickhead, but there's nothing else to be impressed about with what you have on your frame. So like you notice the strength gains or something and you're like, yay! You know, you're not going to have any crazy strength gains with Anavar. You will notice a look, but if you don't already look kind of good, it's not really that great. You know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. Hey, this is based on my personal opinion, so I can say what I want, right? This is personal experience. Now we're in A tier. Let's go. All right. And also, one of the reasons why I left Anavar in B tier is just purely because it will start driving. Now, depends on how much you're taking and what health supplementation we have in place for you and things like that. Because actually, if done right, you can actually take Anavar year round. No bullshit. Someone's going to quote me on this maybe, but low dose, very low dose. But still, it definitely can skew the lipids and your CBC and different things if you're not managing well or you're taking a lot. So for a couple reasons, it stayed B tier, right? So A tier is going to be, I'm going to put Primobolan and Masteron in A tier. And I think a lot of people get these two kind of, they like think they're the same thing, which in some cases I can see like they're not the same thing, but there's definitely some similarities. So I like that it can kind of help mask estrogenic symptoms a little bit. So for some reasons I will use that. Now if you're really just trying to pull E2 serum levels down, you'd want to just use something like Primobolan. But I normally seem to do fine in terms of like my overall conversion from test to estrogen and stuff like that. I always find a good sweet spot for myself. I don't even ever have to use an AI, and I'll just run a little bit of mast sometimes. Again, though, mast, this is going to give you a nice dry look, okay? It's an injectable. I will say this, though. Again, if you're not already lean, you're not going to take this compound and just be like, oh my gosh. It'll give you a dry look. It'll improve your vascularity. It'll definitely give you a nice look. There's no doubt about it. But again, if you don't have already low body fat on your frame, it's really going to be hard for you to notice the difference in using it. Honestly, like you're not going to take it and all of a sudden be stronger. You're not going to take it and all of a sudden look fuller. It just doesn't do that. So to me, I am putting it A tier because it has its place. And again, I've used it alongside a lot of cycles. But this is great for bodybuilders, guys that stay in shape all the time. If you're someone like powerlifting and things like that, I just don't see in most cases where if you're not bodybuilding, this is really going to be super great. But if you're in good condition and you want something that's going to help mask estrogen symptoms and kind of give you a little bit more of an edge and a look that's like drier. I don't want to compare it to Winstrol because Winstrol definitely achieves it a little bit better, but there's some similarities there, honestly. I would also consider A tier because if used right and not using too much, you can also keep your bloods very good with Masteron. So that's another reason why I would put it up there because that's important, bro. Like we want longevity. A lot of us that want to do these things, you don't want to do it to die. We want to do it to look better, feel better, get more out of life, and fucking be around for our kids and stuff, you know? So that's another reason why it's definitely A tier. The only reason why I would put Primo behind Mast, and I also think it can also just be in front of Mast easily, but if I was going to put it behind it, I would say because of the expense, bro. Primo is more expensive. Also, I've always noticed with Primo, you need a higher dose to really see results. And that's also why it's even more expensive. Because, let's just put it this way. Me personally, I've like using 200 milligrams of Mast. To me, this might be crazy to say, but to me is like the equivalent of using like 400 milligrams of Primo. And you would run through Primo vials so fast using that much. So it gets very expensive to use Primo. But it's definitely another classic. It's super clean. It's something it's very stable. It's something great to use for longer cycles for sure. I would also say that for Masteron, but definitely for Primo. This, again, when it came to kind of why I put Masteron where I did from the health side, Primo is also something you can use longer term, and in most cases, if doing things right, managing your health correctly, you can get you're not going to blow up overnight, but you're going to get pretty good gains over a long period of time, and your blood markers are going to stay in check if you're doing everything right, which I do everything right, baby. But one thing I was going to say, another reason why some of these are closer to A tier, or in these cases, these are A tier, because how would you guys feel like to run a cycle, right? Then you come off, or maybe you blast and cruise, that's what I do, and then you lose all your gains. That's very shitty. Now, some of that people might just be coming off incorrectly, right? So that could be one of it. But also there's certain things that you just can't really avoid. Like anytime you come off of Anadrol, anytime you come off of Debol, anytime you come off of even Deca, like stuff like that, it becomes very obvious and you feel shitty. I don't tend to get that same kind of issue with Masteron and Primo and stuff like that, and the gains are more sustained. So that's another big reason. So gains are slower, but they're more consistent, they're more sustained, coming off and on of these things. So that's another reason I would put it A tier, honestly. Primo can be used in cutting phases and bulking phases for a longer duration of time. I also would put Masteron in around that category. Some might lean more towards Primo, some might lean more towards Mas. A lot of it's personal preference and what you're really using it for. Like, say, for example, if I get a guy who is definitely more prone to estrogenic conversion and stuff like that, we're already going to lean to using something like Primo over Masteron, right? Just for that reason alone. But again, there's a lot of similarities between the two. Now, this is going to be interesting. So what do I have in S tier? I don't know if a lot of people are going to be expecting these, but one, I freaking hope so. I freaking hope you are expecting. The other one won't come as a surprise. But I also have rarely used one of these, and I'm putting in S tier. But to be honest with you, I tolerate it very well. So here's the thing. Now, I'm going to just, the two that I'm putting in S tier are testosterone. It's the most bioidentical, right? It better be up there. That should be your number one. That should be your base. And then Trenbolone. I know. Let me explain. But now, again, I want to highlight this too before I get into it. Trenbolone is also very situational. I don't think it should be used in long-term growing phases and things like that. However, there is a time and a place in which it can be somewhat beneficial, especially if you don't need to use a lot. You really don't need to use a lot, okay? But we'll get into it. Let me just go over it. Test is king. We'll start with test, right? I mean, every cycle, no matter what, should be built in and around testosterone. I don't think anyone would ever change my mind on that. I know people who've done DECA-only cycles and all these different things, but, bro, I'm not trying to be a female. Testosterone should be a base in all of your cycles. It's predictable. It's versatile. It can be used for whatever you're trying to accomplish. Bulking, cutting, whatever. Cruising, for example, like I was saying, blasting and cruising. Coming back to testosterone replacement therapy doses, roughly, we find what works for you, at least with my clients, in terms of their blood work, on what they can actually manage, how much they can take in terms of a cruise, and keep their blood markers in check, therefore helping them hold on to more gains. If you were only going to run one compound, my answer would always come down to testosterone. Absolutely. Strength, size, recovery, libido, mood, all of it comes back to this, okay? And to be honest, just real quick, you can grow on testosterone alone without anything. And a lot of clients, I'll throw up an example right here. I'll have them use, if they were stepping into that realm, testosterone first, and only testosterone first, to see how they respond to things. Because the truth is, the goal is always to get as little out of everything as possible, right? And for some of you, it might be realizing that you metabolize things differently. Certain things don't sit well with you. Certain gear selection is for you and not for you. There's a number of things. That's my job to worry about, right, as the coach. But the point is, always start with test. If you were ever going to do anything, you always start with test, and you start with test alone. Eliminate all the other variables, only deal with one, see what comes of it, and then if you really need to or want to, whatever, you can add from there. But never start a cycle with multiple compounds at once. That is stupid. And if someone has you do that, they're stupid. That is if only if you're well versed in this and you're experienced and you've already done multiple cycles, that's different. But if you're just starting, don't start with a bunch of compounds. Tren, I will say, and I will only say this in lower doses, is pretty insane. It's obviously insane in higher doses, but I honestly haven't taken very high doses of it at all. I've only ever used it in lower doses. I'll give you an example. So I did, what was it? I don't remember when it was. Last year before I took like 8 months off, and I stopped taking gear for like 8 months. I was using TRT for 8 months, but I think I did Tren for maybe it was like 6 weeks. And I think I was doing 50 milligrams a week. And I bumped it up like the last 3 weeks to 75. And that was more than enough to get pretty crazy gains, to notice really crazy strength output. I mean, a little goes a long way. I think people do get carried away with this stuff and they'll overuse it, but a little goes a long way. I also think, though, that in almost all cases, it should really be left for only being used in a prep, personally, because it is very hard to manage health markers on it. And that's the only reason why I almost just put it in like A tier, because it is really hard to manage your health markers on it. So if we were going to carry weight there, which a lot of weight really does get carried there, it would be a lot lower on this list. But it's hard to deny the just overall potency of this thing. You know what I mean? And I also would say that I rarely use it. So what is more common for me across the board? Testosterone, Primo or Mast, and Anavar. Those four right there are going to be something that are rotated or used together or whatever. Tren, very rare. But you cannot deny that it is insane. I think the best way to put it, though, is Tren is just not a longevity drug. It is something that it's a weapon. You use it at certain times. And that's pretty much only in a prep setting. Okay? So if you were listening to this at all, I would say almost in all cases you keep Trenbolone out unless you're using during a prep. And even then, you don't need to use it during a prep. But if you're going to use it, that's really the only practical use case where I can argue for it for a small period of time. Okay? Outside of that, man, it was kind of fun putting this tier list together, reminiscing on different things. But, yeah, man, so with all that said, go ahead and comment down below any other videos you guys want to see me cover. Okay? If you're interested in coaching and wanting to work with me one-on-one for everything that I offer to get you to where you want to go, whether that's prep, whether that's weight loss, overall you're trying to lose 100 pounds, whether that's whatever it is, or you're trying to step into the enhancement world and you just want to make sure you do things correctly, applications are below. You can apply there and set up a call with me and my team, and we'll get back to you. Definitely follow the socials, Instagram, TikTok. One of my TikTok accounts got banned, bro. I had 1.6 million on there. It got banned. Crazy. Sucky, but this is what it is. Follow on there and support there, man. I appreciate you guys. Like I said, let me know some different video ideas you guys want to see, and I'll catch you guys, I guess, in the next video. All right? Peace.